Hello, and welcome to the Unity Campfire. Tonight's live stream is going to be a mix of a panel discussion with Unity volunteers and a bit of an open working session with you as we discuss the state of the movement, what our current strategy is, and what are the most important actions and next steps for us all to fulfill now in the interest of saving the Republic and of minimizing the damage and the danger of runaway discord. So this is going to be an interactive session, as we've often done in the past. And so if you are watching this live, please now go to campfire.articlesofunity.org, and you can sign up to be part of the interactive chat. My name is Rylan. I'm a Unity volunteer. And with me tonight are Megan and Alex. And you may also hear some other voices. We've got a full team supporting the platform and working behind the scenes here. So what we are doing right here in coming together to discuss has a bit of a tradition. This is really tapping into something that is truly ancient, and that is the concept of the campfire. So a campfire has a special significance as a meeting place. And in times of danger and and it's useful just to have a little bit of that reference, some fire in front of you as we go through the conversation. So with that, I think probably makes sense just to start off and get a little bit of a sense for what the Unity community is doing right now. So Alex, could you kick us off there?
Yeah. So my name's Alexander Gould. I'm our volunteer lead here at Unity, and I just wanted to kind of talk about a few of the really awesome projects that have been happening in and around our community. problem in the system, and there's a broken piece that we need to come together and fix, and not be on these divisionary lines, but actually we can disagree and come together and still have a conversation and see each other's humanity, and that's really cool.
Definitely. And that kind of conversation has really been at the center of what we're doing here at Unity, kind of, throughout everything we've done, whether it's within our volunteer base or also, of course, I'm sure many of you follow the original Campfire series, of which we are an offshoot, but the original with Bret and various guests. It's a form of conversation in its own right. It's they come in with many of the same ideals that we try to come into a conversation with as well. And it's been cool to see them model that kind of open and honest, civil discourse, not always agreeing, but just coming from where they are and giving their perspective, and us being able to kind of bring that throughout the organization and now to CampfireX.
Yeah, so I think we are due here for a little bit of an update on the broader movement and on Unity 2020. And so the big picture item here is, look, it's September 17th. Yesterday, there was a really great conversation between Bret Weinstein and Representative Justin Amash. And right now we're in a place where our growth, while continuing, is not sufficient to get us on the ballot in time to win this election. That's why we need to continue to build, and to build more drastically, more quickly, and also to place ourselves well for a potential event that demonstrates to a wider number of people the lack and really the lower quality of leadership that we have in this particular moment. And so part of our goal in doing that is to be the place where conversations that are much better than what you're going to find in the 2020 debates take place. And so broadly for this particular session today, and we would like your participation as well, we're thinking about what are some of the ways that we can talk through, role model, and perform the kind of conversation that is required to fix our nation at this point.
I would just like to point out, I know that we just had some audio issues that were just fixed, and hopefully you can hear us now. So if you didn't hear us at the top of the show, I just want to really briefly swing back there and just mention that we have some really great events going on. We've had the Day of Action and Campfire S'mores, and they're all about having dialogue and discussion with our fellow citizens of this country. And I think what we're hoping to model moving forward into this conversation, what Rylan was just pointing out, is having these conversations and figuring out how to, and discussing and emulating how to have open-ended discussions about topics that we might disagree on, and learning how to disagree in a civil way and move forwards towards better compromise than we've been able to make in the past.
Yeah, very well said. And one of the ways that we are looking to engage with you guys tonight is through Democracy AI. If you have used it before, then you know what it's all about. If you haven't, it's a tool that really can allow us, while we're having our conversation, to bring in your viewpoints and questions and opinions, and really make this a more interactive experience for everyone. So at campfire.articlesofunity.org, there'll be a link right under the video that says join the discussion. So click that and get on Democracy AI. And with that, I think it's a great time to actually shoot up a question that, well, let me turn this around actually. So we want to know what questions you have for us as Unity leadership. And we're gonna go through the show and then address your questions at the end. But we're gonna go ahead and shoot off that question now, just so you can kind of get that out of the way, and we'll take a look at them and get to some of your questions at the end of the show. But we'll do that now, and then coming up right after that, actually, do you know what, Rylan, do you want to go back over what the overcoming objections section is? Because I think maybe that was during the part where our audio cut out for a bit.
Sure, yeah. So briefly here, segment that we want to do on this campfire, and it could be a recurring segment as well, but we want to do a little bit to to empower and train ourselves on how we overcome and how we handle objections when we are having our one-on-ones with Unity. A lot of my family and friends are now supporters, and a lot are not. And you start to hear things. This is we are engaged in sales, and fundamentally in sales, you hear you hear objections, and it's your task to overcome them. So, what we want to do today is each of us has come up with a couple of the most common things we hear when we're discussing Unity, and we want to really dive into them. So take the time to articulate them as well as we can, to steel man them, and then ultimately say why they are not persuasive as to why we support Unity. So they're to be overcome. So I think we're gonna ask that on the interactive chat platform here. Get your sense for what some common objections are, and then I think we each have our own list here that we can start to work through as well. So I'm going to do the first one here. So this is an objection about the nature of this moment, and it goes something like this: 2020 is crazy because of Trump. Once Trump is out of the Oval Office, the country will calm down. We'll have more normal and civic discourse. So to try to steelman this, to prop it up as much as we can, there's a lot of ways in which Trump is objectively unusual. His background, his usage of the Twitter platform, among other things. And the theory here is that it's probably most spoken, of course, by Biden supporters, that the task that really threatens our republic is Trump, and that everything that's a symptom of our current moment is being amplified by Trump. So getting rid of him will solve and bring our situation back to normal. Maybe Megan and Alex, anything to refine to that, to try to make that stronger before we kind of discuss it?
Yeah, I think that, I think you hit it on the head with a lot of what you said there. I would add to that I think a lot of people feel that this election is really not a time to be taking chances. It's because of all the things you just said about getting Trump out of office, it's almost like the ultimate lesser of two evils. And I think that this objection really speaks to that at the root. That's, I think, why people kind of are like not willing to take a chance on Unity with this kind of statement.
Yeah, I think that there's also a great deal of fear, and that legitimizes this statement a lot. Trump is an extremely divisive figure. He's sown the seeds of anger and hatred among a lot of different groups of people, and those seeds stand to be watered and grow if he remains in office in a lot of places. Now, when we get into the reasons why this is not a persuasive argument, I think that there are many reasons that those seeds will continue to grow regardless of whether he's in office or not. But I think that the fear that those seeds will continue and spread more rapidly is a legitimate one, and is one that shouldn't be taken lightly, and that's a very strong argument for this point.
Yeah, I'd like to hit that normalcy point head on, because if your expectation is that the last 4 years are an aberration, then you are looking for the source of that, and you're trying to undo it. I'm reminded of an interview that Obama gave, sometime in his career, when I think it was the first appearances of Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias, as they'd made it from their blogging days, and so it stands out to me. But the question asked to him was, you appear to be the most polarizing president in recent history, and one way to define polarizing is to say, how different is your approval rating from your party versus the other party. And the follow-up and the trend line of that is quite interesting, because before George W. Bush, Clinton was, or I should say, George W. Bush was significantly more polarizing on that dimension than was Bill Clinton. Obama was more so than George W. Bush, and Trump is more so than Barack Obama. So if your normalcy idea requires us to go back to an earlier time, I would encourage you to update the baseline assumption here. We have a trend line extending back since I was, basically in primary school about increasing polarization of our presidents. And so your baseline assumption, I think, to start should be that the next president will be more polarizing than Donald Trump.
Well, and Rylan, I think that speaks more to kind of where we've moved as a culture and a society. The fact that every year, like we're seeing like more and more polarization, and I think that that's seen outside of politics as well, and definitely encouraged by our current system and the media. But I think that hits the normalcy point like really well too, because it's like if it takes more than one person, right? Like you could have like with our growing division as a nation, we really need a strong leader who is going to unite us, or a strong pair of leaders, perhaps, who are going to unite us and really help do better than normal, right? Like get to a place where the majority of Americans feel represented in our government, which is something that we're not seeing right now.
Yeah, and I would speak to the point I think I made about the seeds of division. You're saying that the seeds of division were sown several years ago, and I agree with that. And I think that the thing that actually divides us, and this is a point that I think is very relevant to what we're trying to do. The thing that really divides us is not the thing the thing that we think divides us is not the thing that truly divides us. There are a lot of systemic issues, one of which is one that we're addressing head on, which is the duopoly that remains in place. And the other of these systemic issues include economic problems, and I'm not claiming that I or Unity has a direct answer to these problems, but when we ask for leadership, we're asking for people who have ideas and the capability and courage to explore new ways of doing things to solve the problems that truly divide us. And I think that is really important, because neither Trump nor Biden are going to seemingly address the true problems in our economy, the problems in our political system, the problems in our environment that are the true causes of a lot of this division that's been sown.
Right. So the claim that Trump is particularly effective at exploiting a mechanism does not dissuade us in our support for Unity that we actually need to construct something that stands up to that mechanism, that monetizes and amplifies divisiveness and threat. If you think about messages that you must acknowledge as a human when you see them, I think the one that comes to mind for me, and you see it in headlines every day, is people hate you and wish you ill because of your immutable characteristics. And anytime you see that, I think you are obligated to look into it, because there's really there's no getting away from that. There's no concession you can make that saves you there. And we are outsourcing so much of reality to algorithms that maximize time on site, that reward that I don't think it's valid to say that any of that goes away or even is lessened by a Biden presidency. Now, you may well ask, what is Unity going to do about that? I think having representation that the entire country, or at least a representative set of the left and right, can see has got to be part of the solution. Building something that rewards the degree to which you can cross those ideological lines is something that we're exploring and experimenting with here. But ultimately, it's not going to change until we build something that changes it. We are the people that are trying to do that. And if it gets bad enough, more people will stand up. But we're trying to not make that turning point be absolute catastrophe.
Well, should we go on to one of objections that came from our audience?
Sure.
Okay, it's actually one that we have on our list too. So not surprising that the most popular objection here was there isn't enough time to pull off the Unity 2020 plan. So I think that the support for that is fairly straightforward, right? Ballots are being printed in many states this week, if they haven't been already. People are starting to vote by mail-in ballot very shortly. The days are ticking away. The election is coming up very, very soon. So it makes sense. The chance that there is slim, right? No one in the Unity movement is denying that. The time is not on our side. So I think we can all agree on the why there is merit to that argument, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So who wants to take a shot at the rebuttal there?
So there's an analogy that I've actually heard Bret Weinstein use that I've used a lot myself and I like, and it's basically this. If you find yourself in a rowboat and up ahead is a fatally high waterfall, you start rowing. And it's not that important whether you are 10 feet from the edge or 100 yards from the edge or 1,000 yards from the edge. Because if you're going over that waterfall, you're going over that waterfall. And yes, the Vegas odds for Unity are extremely low. And I would ask, here, and I often do ask when I'm in these conversations is, what is the opportunity cost that we're missing, right? We are taking on the Goliath to end all Goliaths right now. And if there's a better thing to be doing that causes the same outcome, I think everyone on board, the Unity movement, would join that as well. We're going after the one thing we know has the power to actually make change within the government. The duopoly is ensconced in a way in the legislature that is different from the presidency. And we've seen in the rise of Donald Trump that the parties are actually weak to being taken over or to having the people rise up and boot out the party line and the consensus views. So right now we're doing the action that we have available to us. We're making the play every day. We look up, we look at the cards in our hands, and we think, how can we play this the best way possible? If it's right now the mechanism to getting on the ballot is a certain thing, and there are other mechanisms that could occur all the way up until a few days before election night. And effectively, the size and the needed event, the size of the groundswell and the needed event increases as time grows more short. So we're conscious of that and we're working towards it. But the ultimate answer to the objection is, what else would be better to build than this right now?
Yeah, I think that there's a growing recognition among the country that things are bad. And if that wasn't already recognized, then it's definitely being recognized more and more. And we are the fix it when it's bad. I've heard the term break glass in case of emergency. If things get worse and worse, we continue to be here for when there seems like there's no other option and we find ourselves in a stuck position. So to the same idea as the rowboat analogy that you so beautifully just spoke about, I think that's a really important idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I think Rylan, I really agree with like the analogy that Bret's used, that you've used, and kind of like the what other choice do we have given to the system as it is, or make a change. And so we're here. And Alex, I think you outlined that pretty well too with the it will take an event, like an event unknown to us, even if we're being totally honest. We can't predict the future, but we know that we're like building something that will be here. So I think that's important.
And something else on this point, or adjacent to it, is that we're building more than just a ticket, which we have and is in place. We're building a movement of people who care to do something and to change something. And I think that, as we've seen countless times throughout our democracy's history, that's when things really change, is when people stand up and do the right thing. And that's what we're trying to do and inspire people to do and bring people together to do. And to the degree which we do that is the degree to which we succeed.
Absolutely. It's kind of a vicious cycle, right? Because every year we're told, not this year, the chances are too high this year. I mean, the situation is too dire this year, that your chances aren't good enough. And, it's not worth it. You don't want to spoil the election. And that actually does draw us into another common objection that we're getting from the audience here, that Unity 2020 would be a spoiler, and that we would draw votes away from Biden and, giving Trump the presidency again. So factually, from our polling, that's untrue. We are actually drawing more votes from Trump supporters right now than Biden supporters, and 20% of our viewership. So this has been done by polling our internal volunteer force, and also polling all of our campfires. It's a frequent question that we ask, actually onboarding in every campfire, I believe. So we have 20% across the entire time that Unity's existed. 20% of our people wouldn't vote for president otherwise. So that's a pretty powerful number if it holds true to the entire population. I think my math is right. I think that's very close to, if not able to, win on its own if you've got that kind of percent. So yeah, I think, anybody have anything to say on the spoiler?
Well, the relevant point about our own audience is not that it slightly favors one candidate or the other. It's that it is extremely well adjusted in drawing from both the left and the right, those who affiliate left or right, and those who are planning to vote for Trump or Biden. But the spoiler is, it's not a real objection. You haven't listened to the plan. That's literally the mechanism that the plan is built into. And if you haven't heard it, very simply, if we don't have a path to get 270 electoral votes, then we will encourage all of our supporters to vote their conscience. So maybe if the Unity ticket does not succeed, the percentage of individuals who are otherwise not going to vote that would vote for Unity but no other candidate, maybe they won't go to the polls. But that's the extent of the mechanism here. This is completely spoiler-proof.
Yeah, I think that there's a real need in our country for discussion and dialogue, and to the extent which the major candidates aren't having those discussions, they're literally talking about not having a debate, and even if they have a debate, it's a debate. We need to be a space for people to have those discussions and dialogue, and I think that that's where we draw support from people on both sides, especially from the right. They're tired of being shut out of discussions. People are tired of feeling like they don't have a voice. And I think to former Trump supporters, Trump felt like he understood them in a large way. And whether that's true or not is sort of irrelevant. What's more important is that they felt that it was true. And if we can give them the reality of that being true and the feel of that being true, then beyond us being a spoiler for the election, I think we can be a spoiler for the entire duopoly system that excludes a lot of people, and that is important.
Well said. There's a degree, if you can spoil the duopoly, maybe it's not such a bad thing. Yeah. I do think that we should handle at least one objection that swings in the other direction. So we've touched a couple of them that are kind of generic time or spoiler issue. Then we touched one that was sort of the anti-Trump, Trump is crazy one. There's another one that I hear a fair amount from people who are planning to vote for Trump, and that has to do with basically the law and order premise. So if I were to articulate it as I wrote it down when we were brainstorming here, it's basically the sense that Trump has taken a stand against violent rioters and no one else in leadership is willing to do so. And I think worthwhile to pause and try to steelman this a little bit more, in that I think in general the violence and the riots that are being referred to here are stuff that has some loose tie to racial equity and to the George Floyd moment that's occurred in 2020. There's some other stuff as well that's more economic, but that is one of the main pieces here. And so the sense is that I think compared to the left, that Trump is more willing to engage in amplifying law and order and potentially advocating more resources to be spent on law and order to secure lives and property in areas that are undergoing extreme amounts of civil unrest. What else to add to that among you guys for trying to tighten up that position and strengthen it a little bit?
Well, I think we have seen, sorry, Alexander, did you have something?
Go ahead.
First then. Okay. I think that I think it's a valid concern, or at least I can see why people have that opinion, because I think that, we have seen even politicians on varying levels of government, especially on the local level, supporting the rioters, or at the very least not standing in the way and stopping the violence from happening. And I think that people are scared. It's like this is at the core of this objection is really fear. And I don't know that I think people have a right to feel protected in their country, and that goes for both sides, right? So like where is this violence coming from? Because people, at its core, because people didn't feel protected. And then where are the people on the other side coming? It's the same place, right? So I think it's a problem. It's a much bigger problem in our society in general. But I guess from that standpoint, from seeing on the other levels of government, why they might feel that the same would be true for the presidency.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that it's based in fear, and I think that fear comes from uncertainty. There's a real problem that has been diagnosed, and I don't think we should beat around the bush around it. Like, the racial equity problem is a real important, serious problem. But any solutions that have been proposed, at the very least, have not been complete. We don't have solutions being proposed that look like full force systemic change for the better. We have haphazard ones that are slogans and don't speak to the real work that needs to be done in order to make movement and policy and on an organizational, governmental level to solve these issues. So in the absence of that, law and order looks like a policy that takes care of the problem, but it only takes care of one side of the problem, right? It doesn't take care of both. And what we're looking for consistently in Unity is solutions that take care of both sides of the problem, that come, with the right perspective and the left perspective, and bring them together and form a compromise that is a real actionable solution. And I think that our call for capable, patriotic leaders who are able to come to that solution is a response that is above and beyond the ability of law and order to solve the problem.
That was a good transition from the steel manning to the rebuttal of it. I would say that those individuals who are pure accelerationists, they want more conflict and more violence because they think that leads to something better later. Those individuals and Trump are engaged in a cooperative game. And I think that, to me, is the important insight, right? If you look at from everything from the ACLU, which is very not protest-oriented, to Black Lives Matter, to the various organizations associated with Antifa, their fundraising has absolutely benefited from Trump. He has been a godsend to the financial balance sheets of those organizations. And the law and order symbolism is not the same thing, in my view, as an actual solution that would decrease the amount of people who are engaged in acts of violence, in rioting and vandalism, in the destruction of property and the harassment of people. So I think the rebuttal here, it actually is an appeal for a little bit of nuance and a little bit of putting yourself in the position of those who are rioting or who are engaging in disorder. So the method for decreasing that is to find what coalition they're feeding off of, where they're getting their resources, and actually drive a wedge and differentiate between those who are the accelerationists and those who have a very, very reasonable reaction to seeing the George Floyd video and wanting to know, like, how can I avoid dying if I see a cop? That is a very, very real concern that's not going to go away. And as long as individuals are interested in treating that the same as acts of violence, the much larger number of people who wish to engage in reform and peaceful protest are going to continue to reward with money and with social status those who are one-upping and engaging in that accelerationist behavior. So it's a difficult argument to make. I think the unity solution is you would have someone who could effectively speak to that coalition as a whole and say, hey, I agree with you on this, and in exchange for that and giving you what you want, we need to separate from those set of people who are engaging in things that are not going to lead to good outcomes.
Absolutely. I think that when people speak up en masse, we need to listen to what they're feeling, not necessarily what they're saying, and we need to take what they're feeling and put it into an action that addresses that feeling and makes it go away. And I think that's exactly what you're saying.
Okay, well, are we ready to take some questions from the audience?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've got quite a few questions came through here. So one of our top questions here is, we keep hearing about an event in the discussions that would spur unity into more action. What event are you envisioning? And is there an action plan in place for when this happens? Well,
yeah, I don't have an event that's going to spur me to more action for unity. I think I'm actually quite near my max potential there. I'll speak for myself. When I've talked about an event, it is the external circumstance that is fortuitous. So from day one, this has been a very late stage movement, and we've been growing at a rate that is extremely admirable and really incredible by general political campaign standards. But we also need a moment in which Goliath really does stumble. And that's happened in many ways already. Several times we've experienced this in 2020. And I think the event is another obvious failure of leadership where we can successfully cast the spotlight on us as opposed to if it's Trump or Biden in particular or the left or the right in aggregate, as opposed to being a story where the other side's going to win. So the event is we are engaged in proactive action, and we have I know I'm involved in a couple of ideas and plans on that, and there's others across our movement for how we seize that moment. But in terms of holding back, no, we're burning all nitro. Like this is crunch time, and there's no holding back right now.
So I think that there might have actually been a little bit of confusion in maybe how we've talked about events in past campfires, because exactly as Ryland said, it's not that unity will start to take more action when an event occurs. It's more that the event would create the space and the opportunity for more people or potentially institutions to recognize unity for the power that it does hold and utilize it to its fullest. So I think that that's kind of what that's why building the groundswell now is so important, to be ready for that. And that's actually a big part of the action plan. But to answer directly, as Rylan said, yes, we do have some scenarios mapped out. And I think that I want to hit this point about leadership one more time, because I think that that's something that has been a little overlooked in our greater like societal conversations right now, because of the divisiveness that we talked about earlier. We're kind of missing like that almost like devaluing the importance of a strong leader. I think that most people would agree that Trump and Biden do not pose like good options as strong leaders. Yet, most of the country is willing to say, okay, I'll vote for one or the other because those are the options that have been given to me. Well, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that, crazy stuff happens all the time, and we need some like strong leadership in place to respond. Getting Trump out of office wouldn't necessarily put us with a better leader to respond to the next crazy scenario that 2020, or I guess the 2021 at that point, will have in store for us. So I think leadership is really important. And one thing we've talked a lot about is the debates perhaps being a really eye-opening experience for a lot of Americans to see just how much is lacking from our leader options right now. So that will be one such event, perhaps.
Yeah, and just to point out something that has definitely been spoken about before, but both Donald Trump and Biden would be the oldest candidate ever elected president upon Inauguration Day. And that age of theirs, not to, disparage people who are aged, but it doesn't seem like they have the mental fortitude or capability to be able to continuously solve for the problems of today. And we're an event to show that, either through sickness or, like you say, Megan, through just them speaking. I think something that's huge about the ticket that we've put forwards is that both Tulsi Gabbard and Dan Crenshaw are both, I think, in their, the age that you're allowed to run for president, I believe, is 36. And I believe Tulsi is around 38 or 39, and Dan, I believe, is 36. So they're both right at that young age, and personally, I think that that's what we need. I think we need the young people, the millennials, the people who understand the technology that we're working with and the complexity of the world that we now live in with this technology, which has only existed for a handful of years. 13 years ago, in 2007, was when the first iPhone was released. So we need people who have grown up around these things, understand them, and are able to act in a way that's in accordance with the new, complex, and very quickly changing world that we live in.
Sure. So on a related note, our government was truly innovative at the time of conception, but it was built for a very different world than we live in now, to Alexander's point. And if you tuned into the Campfire last night with Justin Amash, you may have heard him say that the process of our government has literally broken down. And he is a key player in the government, and to say that from the inside is a pretty startling thing to hear from as a citizen, although I think it's something that many of us have already kind of felt just from our relationship with the government so far. But I think that that's a really key point here, because we do need reform in order to for any kind of progress to be achieved.
Yeah, and this kind of circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning, because democracy is predicated on the idea that we're able to talk to each other and converse with one another and share our ideas and have a dialogue. Socrates calls it's a dialogos or a dialectic. It's what we are meant to have in order to engage in good democracy. And our government was incepted with this idea. People lived in small villages. They gathered in the town hall and discussed ideas with each other. Over the past, 100 to 50 to 100 years, we've moved into the giant cities. There's no town hall. There's no communal meeting space. Religion has declined, so there's no communal churches that we can meet and gather in. And we find ourselves adrift on a sea of social media, which does nothing to help us dialogue and has really harmed our democracy, on top of several years of a divisive media landscape that has led us to, polarized positions. And I think what we're doing here at Unity is bringing people back together in a new format. We're having conversations on YouTube, on Zoom with other people, and that is bringing democracy back. And it's important and it's big, and I think that the extent to which we're able to do it is, again, as I said before, the extent to which we succeed.
Yeah, so Alexander, you actually, I believe, in answering, in kind of like giving your opinion there, I think you actually started to answer the next question that I would like to bring up from the audience, but it's still worth a conversation. So let me go ahead and say it here. So how do you plan to go around the vast media apparatus on the left and the right, especially when social media platforms like Twitter are silencing you? So I think you started to kind of say some of the things that we're doing, especially internally with our volunteers and supporters through Campfire S'mores and internal discussion rooms and things like that. And we also have our discuss.articlesofunity.org platform where you can engage in discussion online. But beyond that, we have had to get a little bit creative recently with getting information out to the public. Many of you may have heard, but we have a new Twitter account called AO Unity Phoenix. We are quite literally rising from the ashes of our old account here, and or I guess figuratively, really. But we have created this account to name a volunteer who will become the flag bearer for Unity and release all official news by starting a tweet AOU and then whatever message we have. So the Phoenix account, AO Unity Phoenix, will name the flag bearer, and then you need to follow the flag bearer, or at least go to the page for all news about Unity. So it's we had to get a little bit creative, but we have to get information out, and it's a really good point. And between Twitter is a huge way to do that these days. So
yeah, and one of our slogans, one of our main part of our slogans is you are the one we need. So you are the one we need to get information out. Each individual who's watching, who's engaged, has the ability to get that information out and to talk about what we're doing and talk about the fact that there's a different way to do this government thing and to do this American democracy thing. And I think that it's really important to continue having these conversations. Other community initiatives that we have going on are chapter building, which has been happening around around our Slack. There's people forming chapters in different parts of the country, and right now it looks different in every place because of COVID and different constraints, but we're building that out. I think Rylan has a little bit more to say on that.
Yeah, from a tech perspective, I would encourage everyone to go just to discuss.articlesofunity.org, and that is where a lot of really active volunteers are working on getting together local chapters. And in the Campfire activity we are engaged in now, that is also something that we really do want to scale. And when we talked about the demonstrating a higher quality conversation, it really is on our local chapter leads as well to make that experience possible and to invite people in. So there's the viral growth analogy, and I think there are some other ways that you can see this unfolding as well. So first, I'd say that yesterday, Justin Amash, that's a figure with at least a bit of mainstream recognition. If you only know Trump and Biden, you probably don't know Justin Amash. But if you know 5 Congress people, I wouldn't be surprised if you knew Justin Amash. He's a high-profile person, and we are actively courting and working towards getting on our platform, and also Bret Weinstein going on other platforms with increasingly large audiences. So there's a couple different ways this could happen. We do have a couple of connections with individuals who are embedded within publications or media outlets that do have a larger reach, and there are angles in which covering Unity is a seller of advertising content and is worthwhile to do. Another way is just by creating events and being bold, right? I admire the cojones on Bret Weinstein by announcing this ballot access plan, and that's been an event that has sparked a lot of interest in Unity. So I think we have to work at every other angle possible, right? It's like water. If one pipe gets closed down or if one avenue is blocked, we are pushing as hard as we can on all the others. I think if you were looking back, telling the story of Unity after it had succeeded, it would be a lot of hearing that the movement was ignored, and then it would be grudging ridicule of the movement being published, and then it would suddenly be, oh, this is too big, and it's self-evident. That's the life cycle of an effective movement. You go from being ignored to being hated to, why are we even talking about this? This is obviously right. What are you talking about?
Yeah. To speak in a slightly different metaphor, which is certainly related, is the idea of a network effect, and we're building a network of a lot of individuals around the country. Some upcoming events that have not been announced yet but are in the works are a uniting chapters event. So once we have a lot of our chapters, which we already are building, up and running, we're going to be trying to bring those chapters together, and virtually and in person at the same time. Other events that we're going to be working on will be some kind of cold calling. In traditional politics, you might have gotten a phone call from a campaign of a certain candidate. We're hoping to go away from that model and do more of these Zoom dialogue calls where we're not calling to advocate and say, oh, will you donate to our campaign? We're calling to have a discussion with you, hear what you have to contribute to the conversation. So that's kind of part of building out this network. And if anyone, sorry, this is me being a little bit of a nerd here, but if anyone knows how mushrooms work, they grow a mycelium, which is a network underground, and under the ideal conditions, many mushrooms pop up out of the ground and propagate. And depending on how big that mycelium is how many mushrooms pop out of the ground. So if we can grow our network, our mycelium out into the country, then when one of these events we were talking about earlier pops up, we will be poised and ready to activate and fruit and be as present as possible.
Well said. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up here, but we want to leave you with a few notes. So you might have heard of our Build the Movement competition. If you're one of our email subscribers, you'll get an email about that today or tomorrow, but you should have already seen it as well. So basically, it's a competition where you can go and do several different tasks, like referring your friends and family to our mailing list, signing up for our newsletter, sharing on our socials, or sharing our information on your socials, and visiting our discussion platform, things like that. And it's all stuff you might be doing already, so you might as well get some points for it. Basically, the way that we have it structured is, of course, the ultimate goal is to get a pair of capable, courageous patriots into the White House. So that should be enough reward in and of itself. But we've sweetened the pot a little bit with some prizes. So be sure to check out our page, see what the prizes are, and share with your friends. So I think that's it for announcements. But one other thing, actually. Tonight we are hosting Campfire S'mores, so you can continue the conversation in groups. So be sure to click the link at campfire.articlesofunity.org and join in the conversation. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you so much.